Hi, everyone, and welcome to Complete and Cast, the podcast for Complete and Box video games. This is going to be a show about anything video game related, anything from new releases coming up, the trending world of video games, and also some stuff such as the history of video games, which is one of my specialties and passions, to something as small as our local neck of the woods and Complete and Box itself. So this first episode is going to be rather basic. It's just going to be me just introducing everything, kind of going over what the podcast will entail. But in the future, we're going to ramp everything up big time. We're going to have guests usually, try to have different topics for the guests where they specialize on them. We're going to start with audio only as of now, and we might go to video later like those other fancy podcasts. Although I won't be allowed to be in my pajamas anymore if we go to video. I'll probably have to wear some actual decent clothes. Definitely check out our YouTube channel where this will be uploaded to as well. It's youtube.com/user/CompleteInBox, or just search Complete Inbox with no spaces. We've been uploading stuff there for years. A lot of it is Let's Play videos. Myself and my brother who works at the store, and a lot of other employees that work the store as well. Although we do have a lot of like real life skits and videos on there. So like I said, I do plan on uploading that on YouTube as well. So description for myself, just to start off today, I just turned 28 the other day. Had Complete Inbox for just about 5 years now. We're actually celebrating our 5-year anniversary in a couple of days. I'm very happy about that. I'm very proud to service the Ephrata area, which I really, really do love. I think it's a great area for both video games and collectors and all that stuff. You wouldn't really know it just driving through, but there are a lot of very, very dedicated collectors in and about the Lancaster and Ephrata area. So much so that it would be interesting to get everyone together in some sort of way for that. I have a friend who has, over 700, Nintendo games. I have other friends that have just like the most amazing collections of, games that are complete in box. To friends that have some things such as some of the rarest games that I know, Magical Chase for TurboGrafx and all that kind of stuff. It's actually kind of gave myself an idea there to maybe have a Collectors of Lancaster episode at some point. Who knows on that? A lot of people ask me, why, we do what we do at Complete Inbox, why it started. The answer is pretty simple. It's nothing too crazy. Just worked at other places, other game stores in the past, and although I really appreciated what they did and thought that they did and still do a great job, I just kind of wanted to do my own way, to kind of like branch out, see what happens. The store as it is now in 2016 was nothing like it was in 2011. Looking back on it, it was a super fun time, but we were so limited in comparison to what we are able to do now, whether it's bring you comic books, which is actually, I'm growing on them, quite a bit in terms of like the history and just learning about them, or going from only 2 or 3 arcade machines to 13 or 14 at this point, or just keep expanding. And it's just a lot of fun. It's fun to see it grow. It's fun to see members of the community come to, help or become employees. It's just a great time. And I'm really, really appreciative to the community and everybody, employees, anybody who's ever stopped in, people who spread the name. We do very, very little advertising. It's almost all word of mouth, and without the customers and the people spreading the news, we would not, I probably wouldn't even have a microphone to be recording on today, so I'm very, very appreciative of that. So I'm just going to go into a little bit about myself today, just to kind of introduce myself. This is the episode all about me. In the future, I will probably be more of the MC asking the questions. So some of my favorite systems to collect for, because I guess I would still first and foremost be a collector / historian. I really love the history of video games and how they came to be, and localization and all that kind of stuff. So I would say my 2 favorite systems nowadays to collect for would be the TurboGrafx 16 made by NEC and Hudson back in the early 90s, and the Sega Saturn, obviously made by Sega in the mid 90s. A couple reasons for those. Turbo's pretty easy in that there's only like 65 games for it, so with few exceptions, most of the games are not too hard to attain. There is those one or two like really, really tough ones, but Turbo's a really unique system in that it was in between the 8 and 16 bit wars kind of thing. It wasn't quite the 16-bit that Super Nintendo ended up being, but it was definitely better than the 8-bit that Nintendo was. A lot of that has to do with the fact that it wasn't one 16-bit processor. It was like two 8-bit processors. So I guess they could technically say they were 16, but it's really interesting. It's hard to find the boxes with the original, it has like a little clamshell case, but then also an outer paper box. Really, really tough to find those that way. So it's fun to kind of be selective and look around. And honestly, out of the 60-something games, maybe 20, 30 of them are just piles of garbage. And that's how it was for the older games. At least half the games on every old school system were just quick cash grabs that were just terrible. But it's those top 20, 30 games on the TurboGrafx, here in America that really makes it shine. R-Type, Splatterhouse, stuff like that. That's just wonderful. And my number one nowadays would be the Sega Saturn. There's 255 games for that, give or take, depending on how you would categorize some of the releases. But the thing that I like about collecting that so much is you've probably seen them before. They came in these huge, long cases. It's a bizarre mystery as to why Sega decided to, come out with cases like that when there's like just so much wasted space compared to how big the disc is. You've seen PS1 games; they have these little tiny cases, and the Saturns with these huge things. So because of that, the fact that they have these really big, easily breakable hinges, it's hard to find them in good condition anymore. So that allows me again to be utterly picky. Sega Saturn is also, I would say that the early 32-bit is both my specialty and my most hated part about games, because it was the beginning of the 3D era of video games, and that was a really, really tough transition for video games to make. There were a lot of early 3D games like Bubsy 3D and stuff like that just look awful. But for those top 30, 40, 50 Sega Saturn games, they are just wonderful. A lot of really good 2D stuff. And again, a lot of really, really bad games, which are super fun to not necessarily play, but learn about, find out about and all that stuff. So I do have plans in the future of doing some certain Sega Saturn related stuff, and we will talk about that in the future when I get more concrete details. One more thing I'm going to go into, just to give you a rough idea of what's going on, who I am, what kind of games I like, and that kind of thing. Again, I would say that a lot of my favorite games end up coming from probably the late Super Nintendo to the early PlayStation 2 era, maybe that mid-90s to early 2000s, although I still do play new games. A lot of people will assume that I don't, I have a PS4. I actually probably play the PS4 more than anything else. Madden with my friends, or, just going through, I like playing with my friends a lot, online stuff. That's the great part about the new games nowadays is, you can go on Dying Light and play with 3 other friends and just have a party chat and just mess around, and it's just super fun. And that's that is something that's sorely lacking with a lot of the older games that I did like. I compiled just a small list of my top 5 favorite games. This is always changing, but it'll give you a good idea as to my taste for the older stuff. Number 5 coming in is Mega Man Legends for the PlayStation 1. I actually just replayed this like a week ago, so none of these games are coming from a rose-colored glasses kind of thing where it's like, you look back and you go, oh, it was the best game of all time, there are no flaws. All these games have flaws to them, but they're still so appealing over time, and again, I've played them all within the last couple of years. Mega Man Legends is a very comfy game, from the music to the generally bright tone of the overworld to just some really funny aspects of it, such as, the voice acting is just hilariously bad, or the fact that a lot of the stuff that you do feels full, but like a little bit like empty, leaving you like wanting for more. When you're used to these, PS3, PS4 games like Uncharted or something like that, that's just like so well polished, and you have a game like Mega Man where you'll be like, what just happened there? It was, Mega Man's first foray into like a big 3D kind of world, and I think it worked really well. I just find it to be so just bizarrely, wonderfully comfy. It's something I could play anytime. Next, we have at number 4, Resident Evil 3. I love all the Resident Evils, including the newer ones like Revelations and Resident Evil 5 and 4. There's a couple bad ones like Resident Evil 6 and Operation Raccoon City, but I think 3 will always stand out because of the randomness of it. I don't know if you guys have ever played it like multiple times, but a lot of stuff happens randomly in that game, from when Nemesis appears to where the items are in certain areas, to walking into a room, one gameplay, and there'll be 5 zombies, but then the next time it'll be 6 dogs. And it's that random nature that's like, I really haven't seen much in terms of games like that. There's a lot of games with random nature, but not quite like that. So very difficult, very good graphics for the PS1, just a great game. Number 3 is not a great game by any means. Clock Tower for the PlayStation 1. You might recognize it as the one with the guy with the big pair of scissors, Scissor Man. It is a point-and-click horror game, which I will always admit is my weakness, any sort of point-and-click game. Although I might not ever finish them, I really enjoy just messing around with them because, point-and-click horror, how can you go wrong? Well, you can in Clock Tower in a lot of ways. It is by no means a good game by any means. It has terrible voice acting. The graphics, it's an early PS1 game, are not great. You don't ever actually, control the character. You just kind of click on items. And they go over and kind of interact with them. It is a very scary game. Scissor Man does appear at random. It's very frustrating until you know exactly what you're doing, but for some reason it is just so scary, but at the same time just like inviting. I really appreciate games that have deep flaws, but like the flaws almost make them better. We'll talk in the future about horror games. I have a episode planned on horror games, but one of my major points of horror games is you don't want great control with them. If you have great control, it's not a horror game. If you feel in control, like you can do anything, it's an action game, in my opinion on that. But yeah, like I said, Clock Tower, a lot of not a great game, but I just love it. Number 2 is also a game that is very flawed, but I can see past the flaws into what it could have been. It is a PS1 RPG called Saga Frontier. That's the game that's famous for having 7 different quests. Red, Lute, Amelia, Asalus, all those different great characters. The thing about that game is so interesting. Of course, there's 7 different characters. It's headed by the guy who made Final Fantasy II over in Japan, so it has a very weird level up system in that when you use certain things, you get stronger. If you attack, you generally get your strength higher. If you attack with magic, you generally get your magic higher. The learning abilities is very, very interesting in that if you use certain abilities, you're more likely to learn other abilities. It's very flawed in that it's one of those Square late 90s RPGs, and a lot of those had a lot of content cut out of it. There was an 8th quest that was planned, and there are many, many instances where you can tell where it was going in it, but they just, for some reason, Square was like, nope, get the game out, get it on shelves, we can't do this 8th quest, sorry, get it out. And there's also like just a lot of like mini things in there. You're like, oh man, where were they going with this? It's good, but where were they going with that? That being said, it's just such a unique game that I can look past its oddness and its flaws, and it's just quite enjoyable. The graphics and the sound. I listen to the soundtrack in the store at least once or twice a month. It's just fantastic. And number 1, this game actually has very few flaws, is Super Mario RPG. It's just the comfiest game I've ever played. The graphics are beautiful. It's easy, but it's not too easy. It's almost, Trevor calls it baby's first RPG, and I can't disagree. It only has a level 30 level cap, but it is just so comfy. It is just an awesome, beautiful adventure. Bowser's a good guy. Every character in it is memorable. Every scene in it is memorable. Every place in it is memorable. My only wish for that game, as with many of these games on my list, is that it was a little bit longer. But that's the sign of a good game or a good movie, is that you wish it was longer. You watch No Country for Old Men, that movie's like 3 hours long, and at the end you're like, what, it's over already? And that's just a sign of a great game. So that's it for the first episode. We have a few planned upcoming guests that you'll see in the next couple episodes. We're going to have friend of the store Parker Lindstrom, might be talking about stuff like adventure games, or I don't know, maybe something that Parker's choosing. And then we have another friend of the store who you've seen both these guys in our Let's Play videos, Mushka. We're going to be talking about some sports games. He's a big sports head, as I am as well. I toe that line between liking video games but also liking sports quite a bit, so we have that in common, and we'll go into that. Feel free to contact us via our email, which is store@completeinbox.com, or comment when you see this on our YouTube about any subjects that you would like to see in the future. Anything at all, we can always get together, and we just love talking games. So thank you guys very much for stopping into the Complete and Cast episode 1, just the introduction, and we will see you next time.